Hey, welcome to another segment of Three Things. On today's segment, we have a really dear old friend who I've known. I've known you, Bob, since pretty much when I got into this industry, which is now almost 25 years ago. You were one of the first people who I was told to pay attention to. It might have taken many years after that, but before we got to meet. But you were somebody who I've always considered to be like a critical component to what makes this industry progressive and modern. So I welcome you to the show. How you doing, Bob?
Doing great, Mark. It's great to be here with you, buddy. I've
Same
been
back
missing
to
you.
you. Yeah, this COVID thing, which all of these three thing podcasts that I've done has all been done in isolation during COVID. I'm finding that now that I'm so used to being home and not being around people that now that I'm vaccinated, I'm relieved that I'm vaccinated, but I'm
Right.
actually kind of panicked around what that actually means. And I have to like maybe go back to the way life used to be.
Well,
Uh,
I was thinking about that the other day. We have a lot of members that are like, when are we going to go back? And I remember Gary Keller saying, being quoted on a Brad Inman interview, why would we ever want to go back to the way it was?
yeah,
And I think
exactly.
about meetings. We could never get together and have a staff meeting of our senior staff because they were all over the place.
Mm.
So we just never could do it. Now every Thursday at 3:30 to 5, every Thursday, we have 17 staff, two consultants, and our attorney and our chairman of the board on a Zoom call, and everyone's there, and we share everything we're all doing, and it's the best collaboration ever. So we would never want to give that up and try to meet again in person because it just would never happen. Like our technology guy is in Pakistan, our education lady is in Austin,
It's
our
crazy,
attorney
right?
was in way West Texas, and yet it's like we're all in the same room together. So
And
I
when you
agree with
try,
you.
I mean, even trying to do that, just the sheer expense and coordination and logistics.
Yeah,
Um, but even like going back to even going to an event, I'm just not ready.
yeah,
Uh, I kind of like being home.
yeah.
Um, so, Bob, there's a topic I wanted to talk about. Um, and I really think this is tailor made for you. Um, Now, you're in an interesting reality because in the association world and in the MLS world, you technically don't really have competitors. You don't have other MLSs in Houston that you're competing with.
Right.
Nevertheless, the job of a leader is to take its members, its audience on a journey someplace. And so that requires risk. It requires a little bit of daring. Um, and you are somebody who has done that many times over. Uh, and it's important to know that, being the CEO of an MLS, and for those who are listening who may not know Bob Hale, you are the CEO of the Houston Association of Realtors and have been that for how long?
88.
Since 88. Um, Now, if you think about, if you're not in Houston, you may not be critically aware of exactly what HAR has done in comparison to other MLSs, and we're going to dig into that now, which is, Bob, if you can, just talk about maybe three big things or three big moves that you've made that others in your role at MLSs across the country dared to not make. What were they? What was in your head? Like what made you decide to do something no one else was doing? And then maybe let's talk about the success and or failure of those moves, because sometimes taking a daring move, that move may not lead to success, but
Right.
but it could lead to a failure, which you learn a lot about, and then use that knowledge to take an even more daring, riskier move that becomes successful. So I want to try and capture all that in this conversation.
All right. So I'll talk about three or so success stories, and I'll talk about one total and disastrous failure. But like I said, you learn,
Yep.
you learn from your mistakes. So obviously, we're known for HR.com. I mean, we're known worldwide. We're known nationwide for HR.com. And, when you say you really don't have other competitors, we actually have Zillow and Realtor.com and Homes.com. And we have some pretty big players that are competitors. So back in 1996-ish, Ren, if you remember Ren,
Yep.
was starting a sort of a proprietary database for listings. And they came to the MLS and they said, for a mere $3 a month per listing, we'll put your listings on this site. And we figured out, that's a lot of money. And what if we did our own? And almost exactly at that same time, I went to a conference in Houston where the keynote speaker talked about the internet. And, back then you didn't really know what the internet was, or most people, including myself, didn't. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, in the near future, your value will be defined by your internet presence, not your physical presence. And I went up to him afterwards. I said, I hate that, it's stupid, but what are you talking about? And he said, your website will be far more valuable if it's done right than your physical location, your office building. So I go back, I get some of my key staff, and we go to our favorite Mexican restaurant. We drink some margaritas, we get some napkins and pens, and we start mapping out what could a website look like. We didn't have any idea.
Wow.
And out of that, thanks to Ren and thanks to going to that speech, HR.com was born. And it is without a doubt the number one thing to our members. When we survey the membership, we say, what's the most valuable thing HR does? It comes in at 98%. It's head and shoulders above. It's really like everything else combined still doesn't even compete with that. So give you an idea, in 2020, we had 1.1 billion page views, and listing detail pages were looked at 800 million times on our desktop and app. And so now it costs us we spend about $6 million a year on the website, less advertising. But it's a huge member benefit, not only from the leads that the members get, but it's totally integrated with the MLS, where the agent can use the app to actually do everything in the MLS on their phone or their iPad. We have an Android and Apple app. I think we're maybe the only MLS that's ever created their own apps. Most people use HomeSnap, which is a fabulous app. We just happened to have had one long before it came along. But so that if you ask the member what tool can they not live without, it's the app. That's the big deal.
Right.
And then a third thing would be, and we did this, we were a little nervous about this, agent ratings. No one was doing agent ratings at the time. And yet, the Yelps and the Googles and consumers were used to it. And we realized if realtors don't get involved, it's going to be a problem for them. So as of today, we've got 493,000 consumers who have been surveyed. We have about a 55% return rate, and we have 5,800 agents who are displaying their ratings. We have a lot of agents that are rated, but they don't share their results. And we allow an agent to be rated and not make it public until they feel comfortable. And they find out the consumers really like them. They give them great ratings. They give them great comments. And so that gives the agent comfort that, hey, I really am okay. And then they start to display those. So I'd say HR.com, the apps, and agent ratings were three of our most successful. As far as the disaster is, we came up with a tool where consumers could search for agents by location and, like on the map, and then agents based upon their production. How many listings they had, how many solds they had, data about the agent. And the board of directors passed it unanimously. We put it up and we had a revolt. I mean, I have never seen so many unhappy members in my life. And so we were very brave. We held our ground and we kept it up for about 8 hours. We took it down and we said, we'll never look at that again. Now, here's the funny thing. Brad Inman or Inman News gave us the Innovator of the Year award for that, even though we only had it up for 8 hours. It never really saw the light of day. But he said you get the award, but for your bravery, for your innovation, for your risk taking, that you learn by your mistakes. And now we're basically doing the exact same thing, but we did it in incremental steps, a little bit at a time. So now you can search for agents on hr.com based on how many listings, their dollar volume, how many showings they did. So I'm a new agent. I don't have a listing. I don't have a buyer yet, but I've shown all these homes in the neighborhood. I know that neighborhood may be better than a top producer that's never been there. So we've learned, but we learned real quick. You do what the members want, and we responded very quickly there.
On that last point, though, you do what the members want, but I think back in 1996, when you were at that Mexican restaurant mapping out HER.com, the members wouldn't even have an inkling of an idea that that's what they wanted.
So no broker had a website back then, really, which is why we were able to do it, because we weren't competing with anybody then because no one was doing it.
True. And I think this is where I want to dig into, which is to ask you about you and your thinking. Because so much of listen, Bob, even the fact that you have a friendly relationship with today's competitors is kind of risky and daring in a world, in a real estate industry where it almost seems like people are just not willing to ever let go of these mortal enemies and the emotions wrapped around. Like it's almost that hatred of these companies fuel their everyday. Whereas in your mind, in your world, it's kind of a waste of energy. Better work with them than against them. But I'm really curious, like, what is it about you that makes you, not that you're not risk averse. I know that you're calculated and you think about, and maybe that's part of your answer, but like you have taken daring steps. It's one thing, here's my setup. It's one thing for a small entrepreneur to take some daring steps. They have nothing to lose. It's one thing for a brokerage to take some daring steps because in many ways, they own the company and they can take a daring step. And if it doesn't work, they can take the responsibility, but they own the company. In your case, you don't own HAR.com. You're, a CEO, an appointed CEO, and you answer to all of your members.
Exactly.
So like, that's a reason why most MLSs don't make moves. They're afraid.
Sure.
So how come you're not afraid? What's going on there?
Well, I think we have earned the respect of the members. They trust us. They realize that when we do these bold things, it benefits them directly. We show them the exact. We delivered 3 million leads to brokers and agents last year at no cost. It was included in their $25 monthly MLS fee. So they love that. It's those that do the agent ratings love it. Every one of them basically uses the app. They love it. And then when COVID hit, we got I went and appeared before the Harris County Commissioners Court, which would decide who was essential, and they agreed with me and our members that real estate was essential. But the caveat was, do as much as you can virtually, not in person. That's the deal we'll make with you. So we created 3 tools: a virtual open house tool, a virtual showing tool, and a virtual tour tool. And members flocked to that. And we've had probably over 50,000 consumers do a virtual open house. Now I have no idea how many virtual showings because we were not able to, or I'm not aware that we track those, but it was a huge success because it allowed the realtor to do exactly what they did before, but they didn't have to make cookies and take them to the open house. That was the main difference. And so, the members see we're responsive to their needs. And right now we're working on a new project called Showing Smart. That's going to be a showing service for our members. Now there's already 6 competitors out there, and I just heard today there's a 7th. So, I mean, they're popping up like crazy. But they said they wanted to create their own. And so we've worked with about 30 agents it'd be like developing a new car. What do you want in the car, not what's already out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's
But
smart.
it's just but we include the members in every decision, the brokers, the agents. It's not like we're operating in a vacuum.
Yeah, there is a culture at HAR that's very unique, which is why you've actually, because there are other big moves that you've taken that extend beyond, like you're in other markets, right? Beyond Houston.
When you say another market, what's in other markets?
Well, like
HR.com is statewide, but we're
statewide.
We're statewide. We have all the listings in Texas, thanks to our relationship with the other MLSs.
See,
but we're not competing. We're not competing with the MLSs. Their members can join ours, but there's really no huge benefit to doing that because they're trying to sell.
Yeah.
Now, before all the listings were on HR.com, a lot of agents around the state joined HAR so they could get their expensive lake property on HR.com. Now they don't need to. So we lost all those members, and that's fine. No reason for them to pay us anything.
I mean, I can't think of another entity that's got the same scenario you have going on. Where they are location centric. I mean, you're the Houston Association of Realtors with a statewide search. So, I mean, this is just really off the cuff, Bob, but like if any MLS executive is listening to this, like what 1, 2, 3 nuggets of advice might you, with all your wisdom, with all the years behind you, with all the trials and errors and successes and failures you had, could you give like a couple of just little tidbits of advice in order to like shake the tree a little bit? And like, what would an MLS executive, or even maybe a new one, just elected into that position?
It'd be like if you asked me, don't you worry about taking a risk? Well, yes, we do, but we would rather take a risk and fail than be mediocre. I mean, I don't want to just be one of them. I want to be the best. Right. And the members want us to be the best. It's their association. It's their MLS. It's their website. And so I would say, don't be afraid to try new things, and really, read in the news every day, read the Wall Street Journal every day, see what other industries are doing, where everything's headed. Don't just stay in the real estate realm and the real estate thinking, because that's dangerous. You got to think outside of that. And then 2 is get the best staff you can hire around you, because I'm the dumbest, laziest employee at HAR. Everybody else is smarter, because that's what I want. I want the best and brightest you can find. And then work closely and engage your leadership where they feel totally a part of it and they're 100% on board. And at HAR, it's a total team effort. The staff, the leadership, it's all you. It's like spaghetti. You can't tell. There aren't them and us. It's none of that stuff. So that's 3 things I would think about. I know
that's valuable.
CEOs that have done things before, but they did it. It'd be like me going out and I want the army behind me, right behind me. And so your staff has to buy in, your leadership has to buy in. It can't just be Bob having some idea and doing it.
You do have an incredible staff.
Well, we do. Most of them.
I do. I know.
Sean and Sam and Renee.
Yeah. I mean, and they've been with you for a long time, which is also remarkable.
Yeah, about 25 to 30 years for most of them. We haven't lost anybody in 20 years, I don't think, at any kind of senior level.
That's another piece of. I mean, because in many ways, because I've been to your facility. I've been in your world. I've been down at Houston. I spoke at an event a few years, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
That was our strategic leadership conference.
I don't remember specifically. I think it was at a bar or a club or someplace cool. But you kind of run the organization like a tech company. It doesn't feel like an MLS.
Right.
And I think that there's a big cultural component to why HAR is just so unique and thriving. Are you not, I'm not even remotely suggesting retirement, but are you grooming like the next leader behind you?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Because
Definitely.
this thing needs to perpetuate. Like it can't,
Yes,
that's
yes.
an important part of leadership is
And
to make
he's
sure
been
that,
with me a long time and we think exactly alike and he's got the respect of the leadership. And so, yeah, we've got a good plan in place.
sweet. Bob, if anybody wants to reach out to you and ask you any questions, what's the best way
My
to get to
email is
Bob Hale?
bhale@har.com, and that's pretty easy.
HALE.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a wrap for us on this episode. Thank you,
Well, it's
Bob.
always great being with you, buddy. Really, really is.
Same. I mean, with all the benefits of remote working and Zoom, there is really no replacement for, especially a one-on-one. I'm a little bit on edge around big crowds and events. I
Yeah,
always have
yeah,
been, but I
yeah,
really do miss the one-on-one
yeah.
get-togethers. Okay, that's a wrap. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.